Earlier today, I put out a poll on Instagram asking you guys what you wanted to see. We could either talk about the Mitakon 35mm f.95 lens that I've been using on my X-T3, or we could talk about the Fujifilm GFX 50S, and it was a close poll, but like 52% of you voted for the GFX 50S. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get to that, I'm going to take a second and pay some bills and thank my sponsor today, which is Squarespace. If you need to build a website, Squarespace is the best all-in-one platform where you can get your domain set up, have a great looking website, and even sell prints all in one place, and it's super easy to use. If you want to try it out, head to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to get signed up, I can save you 10% if you go to squarespace.com/MattDay. So the GFX 50S is Fujifilm's 50 megapixel medium format system. They have the GFX 50S, which is what I rented for a few days, and they also just came out with the 50R, which is more of a rangefinder style body. It's a little bit stripped down, but it uses the same sensor, and it's considerably less expensive as well. And it's pretty exciting time for Fujifilm right now with their medium format and what they're doing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I rented this camera for just a few days. There was a sale going on up at Midwest Photo. I've rented gear from them many times over the years. They're based in Columbus, Ohio, which is just about an hour north of here. And years ago, if you saw my review on the Mamiya 7 or the Contax 645, I rented both of those kits from Midwest. Super good people up there. They always have great service, and their rental department is great as well. So I rented this for a few days, and I have no intention of buying a GFX 50S or 50R for that matter, at least anytime soon. But it was still interesting for me. I wanted to try it out because I had never used it before, and if they had one there ready to be used, I figured I'd take it, take advantage of it. So I had it for a few days, and I tried to just shoot as if I would any other camera, just around the house. I shot photos of our kids inside with, good light and poor light. I was really surprised by this camera for a few different reasons. Number one, the ISO up to 6400 looked really clean, much cleaner than I was expecting, to be completely honest. There was a little bit of color shifts in a couple of the photos, just shooting in poor light and with, the ISO bumped up that high, but I was still really surprised by that. On top of that, the autofocus speed. Years ago, I used a Pentax 645 for a lot of weddings, family sessions, that sort of thing, and I used autofocus with that camera as well. And for a medium format camera, it held up pretty well. But with the GFX 50S, I was really surprised by how quick the focus was. For medium format, it's definitely not something that's known to be competing with a full frame or an APS-C camera in terms of autofocus, but Fuji, they've done a really, really good job with that. Ergonomics, I thought the camera was great. I really enjoyed the way everything was set up. If you're familiar at all with any of their other cameras like the X-T3, X-T2 or 1, or X Pro 2, X Pro 1, X100F, and so on, all of their cameras are really, really similar in terms of where the dials are, their menu system. The GFX 50S is no different from that. It does have, some different function buttons and things like that, but if you've used any Fuji X camera, you could pick up one of these and feel right at home. As you would expect from a medium format 50 megapixel sensor, the detail and resolution of this thing is insane. Whether you need that resolution or not, if you don't plan on cropping, you probably don't need that many megapixels or anything, but it's still interesting to be able to take a photo and really see all that detail when you zoom in all the way. Again, whether that really applies to real world use or not, it's still just interesting to see how wild these cameras are getting. And for us film shooters, we're used to medium format, we're used to large format even, so we're used to that resolution, but to see that in a camera that's being manufactured today and just seeing the progression of these digital sensors, it really is pretty interesting. It's a medium format camera. I say medium format-ish because while, as film shooters, we're used to shooting 645, 6.6, 6.7. This camera is a little bit smaller than a 645 negative. So what we're used to in medium format, this is just a little bit smaller than that, but it's still bigger than a full frame sensor or 35mm film. To me, it doesn't really matter. I use an APS-C camera and then I'll shoot a 6x7 negative right next to it on the same session, and it doesn't bother me. A lot of people like to bicker back and forth between APS-C or full frame, things like that. it really doesn't matter to me at the end of the day. They're all different tools for different reasons. But it is interesting just to see, you know, being used to a 6x7 negative or anything like that, shooting with this camera, it's still medium format, but I'm sure there are going to be plenty of people who will bicker about, you know, the size of the sensor. There was the 63mm f2.8, the 110mm f4 macro, and the 32mm to 64mm f4 lens. I had all three of those lenses with me for a few days. Primarily, I used the 63 and the 110mm. I did use the zoom lens as well for a couple of shots, but those were kind of the main two lenses that I was using. And I didn't, you know, use it for any paid gigs. I really would have loved to take it with me to Nashville whenever we shot a wedding the week after I had to take the camera back, but unfortunately I didn't get to use it in any like real world, you know, in the field. But I still had a lot of fun shooting the camera, and I did get to take it over to my buddy's screen printing shop. They have a screen printing and apparel business, and it's actually located where my studio used to be, so it was interesting to be in there shooting photos. But I just wanted to get some photos of my buddy Cody, and I brought my Flashpoint Explorer 600 and just had a simple little one light setup, just shooting some portraits of him in there, both, you know, with the wide lens, the zoom lens, all the way up to the 110 macro lens as well. And I just wanted to see how it would perform in that kind of setting, because I think that's what this camera is primarily geared towards, whether it be a studio or a landscape photographer, and I was really happy with the results there. Now the 50R is really interesting because it's the same camera essentially, but it's stripped down, it's more of a rangefinder style body, and it's going to be a lot less expensive than the 50S or any other medium format camera for that matter. So it's really interesting what Fuji is doing right now, because they're putting out these incredible cameras, medium format sensors, and they're way, way less than what these other manufacturers are doing. For the longest time, if you wanted to shoot digital medium format, you were looking at a lot more money, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, depending on what camera and what sensor. But Fuji's really kind of bringing this into a much more affordable range, and we're starting to see a lot more people shooting digital medium format. So it's really interesting what they're doing, and I'm really excited to see where this goes, because as time goes on, I'm sure it's just going to become more and more affordable. And in the used market for some of these cameras, you're looking at even less. And it's just an interesting time, I think, for photographers who are looking to get into a system like this. They're bringing it way more affordable, and it's going to open up a lot of doors, I think, for people who want to get into that field, but maybe they just never had the budget before. So it's an interesting time. I'm excited to see what Fuji does. I'd love to try out the 50R as well. It just looks like a big brick. But you know, I don't know if Midwest Photo is going to have one of those to rent out, but if they do, I am going to try and get my hands on one just for the fun of it, and you know, see how it goes. Again, I don't really have a need for it. I love my X-T3, and I don't really see myself needing a medium format digital camera. Years down the road, when there's the Mark III or Mark IV or whatever, maybe this Mark I will be a lot less expensive than it already is. So if you guys have any questions at all about the GFX 50S, or what are your thoughts about Fujifilm and their digital medium format stuff, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. So thank you guys for everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.